Dear friends, first of all I want to thank you for inviting me to this debate, and I want to apologize once again for not being able to be with you for health reasons. I also want to thank the European University Institute and the Immigration Policy Institute, the University College of Dublin and the University of Edinburgh for conducting this extremely important research, because it was high time to assess the options existing in member states for access to citizenship for third country nationals in the European Union, and, even more important, the links between access to citizenship and integration of migrants. It is now extremely important to give a European political dimension to this debate and not confine it to a purely national perspective. This research can and should lead to political steps that, in my view, need to be taken if we want the European Union and its model based on fundamental rights, social welfare and justice to be fully in the reach of those living and working in member states in spite of where they come from. Those who, like me, work in European institutions know how sensitive the issue of national citizenship and European citizenship can be due to historical and cultural reasons, and how biased political discourse can turn this extremely critical issue into a potentially explosive and divisive matter. At the same time, we all cherish the decision to name 2013 the European Year of Citizens, because we do think that citizenship is the core of the European project. But if we do, how can we not see that in the last 2 decades, the European Union has seen at least 3 generations of third country nationals that have come to work, study, or have been born, raised, have studied in Europe, and are still in many ways barred from being fully part of the polis. I say in many ways because I know that, as the research shows, access to nationality is not the only gate to inclusion and participation in society. But it is difficult to avoid that being citizens is a core achievement for any person going through an integration process. And while the European Union has long been talking about integration of third country nationals, fostering the exchange of best practices, it has at the same time failed to address the core issue of participation to the European polis for some millions of new Europeans that have joined our societies, are part of them in many ways, but risk to be lost to Europe. We all know that there are limits to the action of the European Union in this complex field, and in some ways I would say rightfully so. So I do not want in any way to underestimate the complexity of the task of defining a European roadmap in this field. At the same time, in the years dedicated to European citizens, I feel we need to start a political reflection on how to expand the concept of European citizenship, how to gradually extend the rights related to this concept to third country nationals who are long-term residents, how to foster at the European level a process leading to facilitating access to nationality for children born in the EU or having followed a full cycle of education in the EU, in the respect of national differences in legislation, but setting a common principle. Some of these actions would need a treaty change. The limited controlled extension of EU citizenship to third country nationals was an objective of my group in the Convention on the Future of Europe that, unfortunately, due to the opposition of conservatives and liberals, we have failed to achieve. Some other actions can already be taken through a courageous and willful work of interpretation of the treaties and of existing EU legislation concerning, for example, the right not to be discriminated. In this respect, the jurisprudence of the European Court of Justice has yet been of valuable importance in paving the way for wider legislative action at political level in the European Union. I'm referring, for example, to the recent judgment on the Zambrano versus O&M case, as before on the Chen case, where the court held that the parents of a child who is a citizen of a member state must be granted the right to work and the right of residence in that member state in order to protect the right of the child to live in Europe. In addition to this, as the study shows, citizenship can be the last step of the process, but many other factors are critical for real inclusion in the polis, for instance, employment, education, vote, etc. In this respect, EU, just like President Obama is planning to do in the US, with due differences, must engage in a revision of its immigration policy to foster access to employment in the framework of the compatibilities and needs of labour markets, and to make sure that migrants enjoy the fundamental rights enshrined in the EU Charter, which are mainly rights of all persons, not just of EU citizens, including fundamental social and labour rights. My group, the S&D Group, will dedicate significant efforts to the new Europeans, the new generation of people who have a European and many different identities at the same time. Therefore, we launched the initiative Europe Plus, because being and feeling European is not a question of paperwork or where you are born. It is an identity that must be open to everyone. In this sense, I wish you all a very successful conference with fruitful discussions, and hope to see many of you soon personally. All the best.